Text generation. This is one of the core concepts that OpenAI documentation provides. With OpenAI API, you can use large language models to generate text from a prompt, as you using might be using ChatGPT. Models can generate almost any kind of text response. Of course, we know that. Like code, mathematical equation, structured JSON data, or human like prose. If you want a prose, just ask ChatGPT. Of course, by this time, of course, you guys probably be familiar with, ChatGPT. Here's a simple example using Responses API, our recommended API for all new projects. So if you're using an old project, don't use OpenAI. Simple as that. That's what they are trying to say, probably. So you just import OpenAI from the standard library. They have the own SDKs. You import it from there because you're using JavaScript. If you're not using JavaScript, if you're using any of this, you are good to go. If you're using C Sharp, you're good to go. Client responses dot. You ask the responses to create a response by responses dot create, and you send in the model name and the input as what you want to do. Write a one sentence bedtime story about a unicorn. That's what you ask when you are using the OpenAI API for the first time. You ask a one sentence bedtime story. That's what you ask. An array of content generated by the model is in the output property of the response. In this example, we have just one output which looks like this: ID. Okay, that's just ID, type, role is assistant, and there is our content. In the content, we have this output text. Then we have actually a text which is basically the answer what we want. Under the soft glow of the moon, Luna, the unicorn, danced through the fields of twinkling stardust, leaving the trails of dreams for every child asleep. Ah, not that great. The output array often has more than one item in it. It can contain tool calls, data about reasoning tokens generated by the reasoning models, and other items. It is not safe to assume that the model's text output is present at output, not content, not text. So just don't write this code. They're just telling you, don't write it because sometimes it might not be there. Just don't use it. So if you're using some of our official SDKs, include an output text property on model responses for convenience, which aggregates all text outputs from the model into a single string. This may be useful as a shortcut to access text output from the model. So there's a shortcut. Please don't use this. Use this because it's a shortcut. Use shortcut when someone says in the official document. In addition to plain text, you can also have the model return structured JSON format. This feature is called structured outputs. Pretty cool name for a structured data. Structured outputs. Let's move to the prompt engineering. I think you might be familiar with prompt engineering too, but let's just go into it. Prompt engineering is the process of writing effective instruction for a model such that it consistently generates content that meets your requirements. That is prompting. Because the content generated from model is non-deterministic, prompting to get your desired output is a mix of art and science. However, you can apply techniques and best practices to get good results consistently. You know, when things can go bad, just say it's art. When there's a bug, say it's an art. Pretty neat. Some prompt engineering techniques work with every model, like using message roles. But different models might need to be prompted differently to produce best results. Even different snapshots of models within the same family could produce different results. So as we build more complex applications, we strongly recommend pinning a production application to specific model snapshots like GPT-5 2025 October 7, for example, to ensure consistent behavior. Building evals that measure the behavior of your prompts so you can monitor the prompt performance as you iterate or when you change or upgrade model versions. Now, let's examine some tools and techniques available to you to construct prompts. Choosing models and APIs. OpenAI has many different models and several APIs to choose from. Reasoning models like O3 and GPT-5 have differently from chat models, behave differently from chat models, and respond better to different prompts. One important note is that reasoning models perform better and demonstrate higher intelligence when used with responses API. If you are building an any text generation app, we recommend using responses API over the older chat completions API. And if you are using reasoning model, it's especially useful to migrate to responses, message roles, and instructions. You can provide instruction to the model with differing levels of authority using instruction API parameter along with message roles. The instructions parameter gives the model high level instruction of how it should behave while generating a response, including tone, goals, and examples of correct responses. Any instruction provided this way will take priority over prompt in the input parameter. So, as you can see here, you have the model, then you have the reasoning, then you have the instructions, and then you have the input, which is a semicolon optional in JavaScript. Comment if you think yes. The example above is roughly equivalent to using the following input messages in the input array. Roughly, you have an input array, and then you have a role, and then you have talk like a pirate. Then you have, if you're a if you're a developer, if you're having a developer role, just talk like a pirate. People will believe you. User was respect you, respecto. User are semicolons optional in JavaScript. Well, you know, these guys are funny, Developer, they're not asking normal questions. A user is asking normal questions. Sorry. Oh, by the way, normal means like, normal questions. Who would talk like a pirate? That's not normal. Is semicolon in a JavaScript? That's normal. Note the instructions parameter only applies to current responses generation request. If you are managing conversion state with the previous responses ID parameter, okay, I just zoned out there. Note that Note that the instruction parameter only applies to the current response generation request. If you are managing conversation state with previous response ID parameter, the instructions used on previous turns basically means previous conversations, will not be presented in the context. Cool. The Open AI model spec describes how our models give different levels of priority messages with different roles. Developer. Developer messages are instruction provided by the application developer prioritized ahead of user messages. Okay, developer gets prioritize ahead of the user. If you're a user, messages are instruction provided by the end user prioritized behind developer messages. Assistant messages generated by the model have the assistant role. I don't know what's his priority, but probably you have a better priority, the assistant. A multi-turn conversation may consist of several messages of these types, along with other content types provided by both you and the model. Learn about managing conversation state here. We will go to that later. Maybe probably it's the same documentation, I guess. Yeah, we can go to that later. You could think about developer and user messages like a function and its arguments in a programming language. Oh, yeah, function and arguments. Is developer is a function? Okay, I don't get it. Okay. Developer messages provide the system rules and business logic like function definition. User message provides inputs and configuration to which the developer message instructions are applied, like the arguments to a function. So user is the argument. Okay, I'm pretty. That's the thing. Yeah, developer is the function. User is the argument. So developer is like system rules and business logic. User is kind of like what you call the inputs and configuration to which messages are applied. So you pass in something, user. You pass the user, and developer will define how things are going to be. Yeah. Reusable prompts. In the OpenAI dashboard, you can develop reusable prompts that you can use in API requests rather than specifying the content of prompts in code. I am having a uh, kind of a back pain, so I'll read that again. In the OpenAI dashboard, you can develop, which I never showed you because I still didn't log in. In the OpenAI dashboard, you can develop reusable prompts that you can use in API. Okay, just get a notepad and use this. Okay, fine. Uh, you can use the API request rather than specifying the content of prompts in code. This way, you can more easily build and evaluate your prompts and deploy improved versions of your prompts without changing your integration code. I'm not pretty sure what they are talking about here because I don't have the context. Somehow I don't have the context. Why I don't have the context? Because you go to the dashboard. This way, prompts. Okay, improve versions of your prompts without changing the UI integration code. What is the integration code? I really don't know. Maybe integration between your app and the OpenAI. Yeah, So I think okay. So this is probably things like you have a prompt, reusable prompt, which you can paste it, I guess, using API request rather than specifying content of prompts in the code. Oh, okay, cool. Now I got it. Okay. So let's say if you want uh, a specific, that is common, like let's say every one of your results is supposed to have an Australian English or American English, you can specify that reusable prompt in the dashboard. So in that way, you can actually whatever the results that you're getting from your code, you're basically going to put this code. So you don't have to put this in your code. So whatever the prompt is, let's say write a beautiful poem, and that will be in American English because you have used the reusable prompt as use American English. Pretty neat, actually, to say. You don't have to write it in every each and every places. You can use it in one place. Here's how it works. So okay, they have actually mentioned it, so I might be wrong. Create a reusable prompt in the dashboard with placeholders like customer name. Use the prompt in your API request with the prompt parameter. The prompt parameter object has three properties you can configure: ID, the unique identifier for your prompt, found in the dashboard; version, a specific. Okay, cool. Actually, you can add it, and you can actually refer. I guess that's how you can use it, like something like that. A specific version of your prompt defaults to the current version as specified in the dashboard. Okay, you can actually version your this as well. So like let's say write in American English, write in New York English. That's the version 2 of it. Variables, a map of values substitute in variables in your prompt. Give me a second. Give me a second. Okay, variables, a map of values to substitute in variables in your prompt. A map of values to substitute in variables in a prompt. Okay, okay, variables. Okay, same thing, same thing. The substitution values can either be strings or other response input images like input image or input file. See the full API reference. I don't want to see that right now. So here you can see the string variables. Create again prompt. You can actually the prompt actually you can refer the ID, the version, and the variables, customer name and product. Okay, that's pretty neat. Next steps. Now that you know the basics of text inputs and outputs, you might want to check out one of these resources next. Build prompt in the playground, which I guess you're going to do it in your own as and homework. Yeah. Use the playground and develop and iterate on prompts. Generate JSON data with structured outputs. Structured outputs, basically JSON data. Yeah, yeah. I think that's the same thing. Structured data. Generate JSON data with structured outputs. Ensure JSON data emitted from a model conforms to a JSON schema. Full API reference. So I think that's all for text generation. Let's next see image and vision.